Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And in this video, I'd like to discuss the news that Keir Starmer is going to be holding policy talks with world leaders, including President Macron next week, in order to get a head start on his international policies while he waits for Rishi Sunak to finally trigger the general election. And the meeting next week in France is going to be particularly tied in with his plans for dealing with the asylum crisis, which the Tories will be leaving Labour to deal with, and the Tory client media do not seem best pleased. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, although the likes of the Telegraph are describing Macron as breaking protocol by holding a meeting with the leader of the opposition, he's doing nothing of the sort. It is, of course, not usual for heads of government to have policy talks with leaders of opposition groups, but that is because they would have no power to act on agreement, waste of time. But it is usual to hold talks with opposition leaders when they are about to become heads of government. For example, President Obama held talks with David Cameron while he was still opposition leader in 2009. I haven't checked, but I don't imagine I would find an article in the Telegraph that would be attacking that meeting. It is a little embarrassing for Sunak because it's a sign that world leaders view Starmer as at least having a credible chance to form a government soon. As well as Macron, Starmer's going to be meeting Trudeau and also hoping to be meeting Biden at some point in the near future. And in terms of the reasons for the meetings, from Starmer's point of view, it's to gauge support for plans for which he's going to need cooperation with other countries. And in the case of the meeting next week, very much his asylum plans. The crisis we have in asylum right now, when you drop all the Tory culture war nonsense, is twofold. First, dangerous channel crossings driven by the lack of safe routes for asylum seekers. Labour have said that additional safe routes need to be established. Right now, we only have them for very specific countries. Second, the huge backlog of cases which is resulting in way over the top spending on frankly unfit for purpose accommodation and delays in welcoming genuine asylum seekers to the workforce where they'll be able to pay their own way and boost our economy at the same time, and delaying, well, removing people from the country if their asylum claim fails. Now, although Starmer is placing a lot of emphasis on smashing the people trafficking gangs, which upsets some people because it's like, well, and he's ignoring the humanitarian side of things. I will remind people, bandwidth in public messaging is limited. When they're speaking through a particular outlet, they're targeting the people who listen to or read that outlet. Labour have consistently talked of the need for safe routes. They've done so again this week, and with Starmer's presentation of the asylum plans. They're just not shouting it from the rooftops because that is not what they need to emphasise to get those target voters on board. They are putting more emphasis on the criminal gangs because that's what the target voters want to hear about. But the Tory press are going ballistic. First, they weren't happy that Starmer would even be talking to policymakers in Europe and North America. Now they're upset at Labour's plans to push for an agreement with the EU. Now, I don't know how realistic an agreement would be. Is it just that can we join the Dublin Agreement as a third country? I mean, that's really for EU members. Do we just say, well, let's just join it as a third country? Do the EU say that's the easiest way to do it? Or do they say, look, this is for EU members, but we can come up with a bespoke agreement for you as a third country? I don't know, but that would be Starmer's aim. We would be part of a continental management programme for asylum, once again, as we were, but it would, of course, mean taking refugees who were seeking asylum in other EU countries, and the Telegraph and the Mail don't sound happy. What do you think? Some of the more comical sources of Tory news are also banding about a number which they admit comes from the Conservatives. Labour's plan would mean an additional 100,000 asylum seekers. Needless to say, the figure is, of course, completely made up, and a casual glance at asylum applications while we're in the EU compared to now would demonstrate as much. Funnily enough, Sunak is not even opposed to this aspect of Labour's plans. Like, whenever he's asked, do you want an agreement with the EU Prime Minister? He doesn't say no. So he's going to find it hard to attack Labour for wanting one. In fact, it will further underline Tory failure if Starmer in government does get an agreement that's in line with what the Tories wanted, which they could not. But I wonder if what the Tory media are most anxious about is that Labour deal with the problem of channel crossings fairly quickly. I don't know whether Starmer could get all the support he needs for his plans. No idea. And I don't know how quickly he can get it if he can. Part of the reasons for these meetings now is so that he can get as much talking done as possible before he even assumes office, with the aim to proceed as quickly as possible once he has the power to do so. It's clear that he aims to deal with the issue very quickly. So how would it look if Labour solved the problem that the Tories insisted they needed all of this new legislation, they needed to tear up our human rights, need to spend a fortune on plague barges and Rwandan concentration camps? In fact, Labour may be able to play the Tories at their own game here. Imagine Labour calculating how much the Tories have spent on these pointless schemes. Easy for them to do that once they are in government because they have access to the government records. They will then show just how much the Tories spent on getting nothing done, and then they can show how much they spent on actually solving the whole problem. Channel crossings sent back to next to nothing, no huge backlog requiring more and more accommodation money. How on earth would the Tories attack that? Then reveal how much it cost Labour to deal with the problem with how much the Tories spent just making it worse. And when it comes to the emphasis on the messaging about dealing with criminal gangs, Labour have got a twin benefit. The first is, of course, because that is the emphasis many of these target voters want to hear. But the second is that Starmer intends to draw on his experience as a prosecutor doing just this. He will go into the election with a proven track record of taking down criminal gangs, and Sunak will go into that election with a proven track record of doing bog all. I suppose a third potential benefit could be that the Tories lose their mind over Asylum now as well. Like, recent polling just keeps showing that the Tories have lost control of the asylum and immigration narrative. Completely lost control. You've even got the Red Wall preferring Labour's policies. You know, the Conservatives would be well advised to withdraw gracefully from this one and find a new bandwagon. But announcements like this are basically guaranteed to get the Tories frothing again. Oh, Lee Anderson will be out, don't you worry. And while they're banging on about Asylum, all they'll be doing is drawing attention to their own obvious and expensive failures, while simultaneously doing and saying nothing about issues which actually matter to most voters. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.